Good morning. Welcome back to day three of Streaming Media Connect 2025, where this week it is all about live. I'm Steve Nathans Kelly, editor of Streaming Media Magazine and chair of Streaming Media Connect, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this morning's keynote with Neal Roberts from Warner Brothers Discovery and the one and only Andy Beach. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. The first person to correctly identify the music you heard as we were coming in this morning, both the track and the artist, will win a $50 gift card from Amazon at the end of the session. But you must be present to win, so stick around because it's going to be a great conversation. Chat in the chat, as always. We're not taking questions in this session, but sessions from all three days of Streaming Media Connect this week will be on the Streaming Media YouTube channel. In fact, most of them are already there. The link for that is in the chat, and we'll be back right here in February 24th to 26th, 2026 for the next Streaming Media Connect. The website for the show is not up yet, but the call for speakers is open. So please send us your ideas and just let us know if you want to speak. And let's see, closed captioning is available. Just hit the CC button to turn that on. And without further ado, I would like to welcome to the stage Andy Beach.
Good morning, Steve. How are you doing?
Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you. I'm excited for this one. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
All right, so take it away.
So, a quick note before we get started. There's obviously, I don't know if anybody has seen it. There's a lot of noise in the industry news this week about possible deals and things going on. We're not going to speculate about any of that today. We want to stay focused purely on what Neal actually owns and does, which is build a great live streaming experience for real viewers around the world. So with that, let me quickly introduce Neal. Neal, you're a distinguished video platform engineer at Warner Brothers Discovery. Your career has been Comcast, Dolby, WBD, Netflix. Now you're back at WBD and you've got a front row seat to some of the biggest events that are going on that we can watch on TV. You're involved in the Olympics, major sporting events, NASA coverage, a variety of things. So you're sitting right at the intersection of a lot of broadcast and streaming. You're working on HDR, immersive audio, contribution workflows. I think we're going to be okay for the next half hour finding things to talk about that have nothing to do with the news.
There's no shortage of topics here, Andy. It's great to be here. Thanks.
Yeah. So a lot of what I see you describe is that you're creating an equal TV viewing experience for everyone, regardless of their needs. Where did this sort of ethos and principle come from for you?
Yeah, so it started back at my early days with Comcast, working very closely with some mentors through my career and still folks that actively keep in touch with, Tom Lukowski, Mark Francisco, Tim Carroll at Dolby. We all have, really common goals. Those were the early X1 days. And it became really, really clear and apparent that there was so much more that could be done outside of regulatory requirements that had gigantic impact on the way TV is consumed. And I want to just set the stage here a little bit, Andy,
Yeah,
and make it super clear that accessible content doesn't mean it's only for folks who have disabilities, right?
sure.
We're trying to create that accessible platform wherever that is, and we're inherently creating that equal TV viewing experience for everyone.
Yeah, I think that absolutely makes sense. Let's unpack the experience part of that. So when you say you want to create an equal live viewing experience, what is actually under the hood there? What's going on with the program feed?
Yeah, so I think it's really important that you start on the right side, the consumer side, right?
Mhm.
And work your way backwards. Once you understand the pain points, we're all consumers, right? We all sit down and watch shows or movies at different times in different ways. We know the challenges in the industry, but you have to really understand what your viewers' challenges are. And if you start there and you work backwards, yeah, things like codecs and bit rates and encoder settings, all those things are really important, but you can't start with the technical components and then try
Start
to
with
define
the
your
customer lens
experience.
first.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because you're putting yourself in a box if you say I can only do these technical things. But if you start on the right and go backwards, you can make sure that technology is defining your experience. I'm sorry, make sure that the experience is defining the technology, not the technology defining
Yeah.
the experience.
Well, let's talk about a little bit of the things that do kill it. So if I'm a fan at home watching a game, what are the three or four things that might decide whether I'm enjoying the experience or I'm really finding it painful to watch?
Yeah, so I've done a bunch of work around trying to understand some of the most important components of any broadcast, and bad audio is always top, right?
Right.
You could show low resolution pixelated video and people will still watch if the audio is good, but they stop watching as soon as you have audio drops or a bad mix. So bad audio is definitely one. Subpar localized experiences is another.
Mm-hmm.
That includes things like multi-channel, multi-language audio, which we'll get into here. Lack of features, I think, needed to engage as well, right? So if you need captions, maybe you're in a loud room and you need captions. If you don't have them, you're just not going to watch. Maybe you need audio description or sign language in order to contextualize what you're watching. So making sure that we're giving all the features to the viewer that are important. And of course, harkening back to my uh, big passion in HDR. If we've got dark or inaccurate video, it's our job to maintain creative intent in any way possible. So you do need to make sure that your video is as pristine as it can be.
Yeah, you do want that image to look good, even though we're listening first.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely. So I think I've heard you in the past push back on the idea of just bolting streaming on as sort of a sidecar to the broadcast workflow. Can you talk a little more about that, sort of what the changes that come along with ingest contribution and streaming
Yeah.
operations?
Yeah, so I think the easy answer and the most obvious one is that when you rethink your workflow and not just bolt on your stream experience to the end of a legacy broadcast workflow, of course, you lower latency, you improve quality through less transcodes and conversions and compression points. You're lowering your points of failure. I think, though, less obvious pieces are operations, as an example,
Hmm.
as they relate to the end user experience. And so if you again just bolt that piece onto the end, you're now duplicating your operator requirement. And sometimes duplicating that as many times as four times, depending on what your workflow looks like. And they're all different. But by streamlining those operations, you're also streamlining the final output and you're gaining consistency from show to show, which I think is really important from a viewer. So as an example, if you have a director on an AD line who might be counting down to an ad break,
Hmm.
and then you've got and they're in production control and they go to black, then your master control operator may be counting additional counts because of the latency in the workflow before they fire off a Scuddy trigger for that ad break. Then you're handing that signal off to a digital operator who's distributing that out to your OTT platform, your direct to consumer platform, and they are counting some more and adding different triggers depending on what the requirement is of that platform. You just have inconsistencies everywhere. Frame
Right.
alignment for ad breaks. You have to go back and cut your content for post event live VOD pieces. So if we streamline those pieces, the end consumer experience is tremendously improved. And of course, that requires a much tighter integration with your broadcast team. You almost need to act as a single team rather than bespoke pieces across that workflow.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're not only sort of consolidating experience across the programming and the shows, you're doing it across the devices and the destinations that
Yeah,
you're reaching out
absolutely.
to,
Super
which is
critical, right? Like it doesn't
yeah,
matter if it's our content. Our content is our content. So if I deliver that to HBO Max, but we're also handing that off to Comcast, they should be the same level of quality. Not
right.
everybody can take the same level of quality on
Sure.
ingest for your syndication partners, but that's okay. You still have a single flow and you derive everything from those points for those deliverables.
When you talk about sort of treating it as a single team versus the sort of the multiple, how does it change the way you talk to the teams across broadcast and direct to consumer?
It's definitely forced us to have brand new lines of communication. And we do have to integrate very, very tightly. So it's a constant back and forth with our broadcast team. We have calls every hour, Slack messages, all these things. There's definitely value, and that value has been recognized. So I think it's been a unique and interesting few years for us as we've learned what each other's passions and restrictions are across some of these different functions and try to find unique ways to get around them.
So let's sort of switch from the feed to a little more of the product talk. I've heard you talk about treating operations really as a product versus just a service. Can you sort of unpack that a little bit for us and what you mean by that?
Yeah. So um, as an example, we've leveraged at WBD for our HBO Max and several other live streams that we distribute a theory that I've called three up, which is up mapping the content from SDR to HDR, up resing, in our case, 1080i to 1080p. We do get native 1080p content in as well.
Hmm,
Sometimes it's down resing from 4K for distribution in 1080p. We don't really distribute native 4K content live either. And then up mixing the audio either from stereo to 5.1 or 5.1 to Dolby Atmos when we don't get it natively. But we're not trying to trick customers there, right? Or subscribers. We're trying to leverage these technologies to give us the confidence that we're delivering the most consistent audio and video experience.
right.
So we're being very careful, working very, very closely with our content teams and our production teams to make sure we're maintaining that creative intent. That's our job. They're the creatives. Now we have to deliver it the right way. Um, by doing this, we take away the consumer device's ability to make assumptions. So if you deliver SDR, sorry, to an HDR display, it stretches that. You're at the mercy of that TV manufacturer. So we
Sure.
can't be confident in what we're sending to the end user. And the same with audio. We're removing the ability to upmix because we're delivering it in a larger container. This all requires pristine source, which we
Hmm.
have. We just had to reimagine how to get that source out of production and into our direct to consumer flows. Low compression, and the feedback we've gotten from subscribers has been really, really good. Typically, people go to X or Reddit to complain. We don't get a whole lot of complaints. We actually get a whole lot of praise. So it's working very well.
Right. It's nice when you're getting the customer feedback to show the positive side of it.
Yeah.
You were talking there a little bit about the sort of the low quality assets, but I know at the same time I've heard you talk about uh, the issues of not sending a 25 megabit stereo feed into a premium streaming product. Uh, how does the conversation look with the broadcast side when you're sort of dealing with the quality bar end to end as a
Yeah.
topic?
It's a great question, and it was an interesting path for us when the day we launched live on Max, we simultaneously moved from on-prem 2110 based cloud master control to a cloud master control solution in broadcast.
Wow. So
Uh,
that was a big day.
it was a gigantic day,
Yeah.
right? Because it didn't just affect us, it affected all of our MVPD partners as well. They were taking
Sure.
these newly created feeds at the same time. And initially, when broadcast teams on our side were making these decisions to move to Cloud Master, there was an assumption that we would just take the same feed that we were delivering to an MVPD partner. Um, I came back and said, "Hey, let's not adopt the one size fits all approach here. I think we can learn a lot, not just for our outputs, but all the outputs."
Sure.
And so, based on these three up theories that I had been developed for about a decade before that, I knew we needed this better source because we knew we wanted to deliver this content using Dolby's technology through Vision and Atmos. So I actually was able to leverage the shift from on-prem master control to cloud master as an opportunity to really say, look, this is supposed to be flexible, right? That's one of the obvious benefits from going to the cloud is it could be anything in, anything out. So let's figure out how that works. Really, it was the demos, Andy, that I gave where we brought a rack in and we processed all this content the way we wanted to deliver it through Cloud Master. We gained confidence in the broadcast and the content teams on what that process looked like. And it was just a downhill chase from there to make sure that we were getting all these pieces for HBO Max. And ultimately, a lot of what we learned improving the video quality coming out for HBO Max, we've now
Mhm.
also applied on the broadcast side for our linear distribution partners as well. So we've upped the quality in a number of places, not just to ourselves.
It's almost like you had to act as like a middle ground customer advocate for the places downstream to make sure you were getting the right thing so you could build the correct packaging and payloads for all of those places,
Right.
and not just go with what's always been done.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. Not most MVPDs, or especially all the vMVPDs now, are having to deliver progressive signal. So if we control that deinterlace, it's one less opportunity for that content to be stepped on downstream after we
Right.
distribute it.
Was there any sort of big takeaways that the broadcast side of the house got learning from the sort of streaming part of this process?
I think so. I think we've both learned on both sides
Hmm.
a number of things for each other, but I think perhaps the biggest misconception that was cleared up on their side was delivering video to the internet is not just as simple as dropping a transport stream into a transcoder and spitting it out on the other side to an app,
Right.
right? It's never that easy.
Right. No,
And
if only it was.
and I think on the opposite side, I think that we're always learning, right? There's always more new things happening. But I think on the streaming side, we learned that legacy broadcast is really hard and complex. And by the way, still generates a bunch of money for the company.
Sure.
And so you can't just say we want to do all these things. And it should be really easy because the broadcast team comes back and says, "Hold on, there's a number of complexities in legacy businesses that we still have to operate." And then you just have to find that middle ground, Andy, to say, okay, I don't want to affect what you're doing there, but we can do this better by getting creative and thinking outside of the box.
Now, not everybody's going to run at the same scale you are with what you're doing at Max, but are there some key takeaways if you were advising a sort of a smaller streamer or a regional
Hmm.
broadcaster who's moving to the cloud model? What's the like one or two things they need to think about in the next 12 months?
Yeah, even if you're not moving to a cloud model, right? Perhaps you just don't have the money to spend, and you've got existing workflows and parameters you need to stay inside. I think it's always a good exercise for everyone to just try to reimagine your workflow in every single place you can find efficiencies, all the way from the source. Find ways to not require signal normalization in as many places in that workflow as possible. And if you can get better on the left, everything coming out on the right will just inherently look better, right?
Sure.
It doesn't matter if you're only distributing at 720p, that's okay. That's fine.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you go back and you look and say, oh, we could do this thing better, right? You can't amplify a bad signal, it just becomes worse. So if you
Right.
start on the left as good as possible and just try to continuously find those efficiencies, your output's going to be better, regardless of whether you're changing it or not. Most importantly, Andy,
Yeah.
do not be afraid to experiment and break things. We break things every day.
It's good to know. It's good to know that even on the Mac side, you find new ways of not doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No such thing as a failure.
So let's actually talk about some of the equal viewing experiences and delivering for a global audience. I know I've heard you talk about a pretty powerful example of a blind fan watching an NHL game and making sure that the audio is there and mixed beautifully. Can you sort of walk through the scenario for everybody and explain what you mean with on feature parity with the VOD that needs to
Yeah.
happen for those live events?
Absolutely. So just everybody should take a second to put yourself in the shoes of a vision impaired user who absolutely needs, or maybe just someone with a second language requirement. And if you turn that NHL game that you're referencing on, and it sounds incredible, you've got this tremendous mix. Maybe it's Atmos, maybe it's 5.1, maybe whatever, right? But then you realize I have no idea what's going on because I need audio description. I don't speak
Hmm.
the native language that the content was produced in. I think you enable your feature to get the context that you need from that broadcast, and it comes down to this stereo or mono experience, which is really bad, right? And
Sure.
those folks, they didn't ask to have the requirements that they have. They just need them. So we need to make sure that we're meeting all those marks. I think in live that can be really hard to maintain all those pieces, right? We'll talk about it here, but in VOD, we've got time for call it
Right.
perfection, right?
The
You,
luxury of time.
you can get your subtitles exactly aligned where they're supposed to be, placed exactly on the screen where they're supposed to be. Um, in VOD, we're supporting between 30 and 40 audio and subtitled languages. The mix is the same, regardless of the language that you've chosen with or without audio description. So we need to get to that point. And I have a bunch of theories and ways that we know we can get it done. I've worked on an industry project that's proven it's possible. And so that's where the parity really comes from. It's not just subtitles or captions versus audio description. And it's much, much larger than that, all the way down to graphics and things.
Right. I do want to hear more about the graphics, but let's sort of stay on the captions and the pieces. It really sounds like what you're talking about is not treating the audio description, sign language, and other pieces as just simple compliance checkbox features, but making them a core product and a core feature of what you're delivering instead. Is that right? Is that the right way to think about it?
100%. Absolutely. Look, as an industry, we've got to do better. We've got to stop using the mandates to create minimum viable products that fit those regulatory requirements. We're constantly telling or forcing our subscribers, members, viewers, consumers, whatever you want to call them, into a mold through our content in the one or two languages that we're providing, but we've got to be more inclusive. Absolutely. Believe it or not, there's gigantic opportunity for growth in globalizing the content. But a lot of
Sure.
times the technical complexities don't allow for the deep dives required in order to start delivering this stuff. Quite frankly, it's not that difficult, but you definitely have to set aside the time and the willingness to dig in. Again, super complex in live. In live, typically the dialogue is just inserted in the center channel, but you have this ambient bleed in from that announcer, right? So if we come back to that
Sure.
hockey game, you still hear in that center channel the crowd screaming or the horn blaring after a goal, things like that. But if we then replace that language either with AI translations or human second commentary, and we just put that in the center channel, you lose part of your mix. So we're actually
Right.
breaking creative intent. Um, so you also can't just simply add a second language on top of your primary language for dialogue because then you're hearing them both at the same time and it's indiscernible, right? Um, so rather than just replacing, we're actually working with audio mixers, A1s in the live space to say, hey, let's rethink the way that we're mixing live content. So for example, let's actually use the center channel for music and effects and ambient
Hmm.
sound. And let's monitor in the truck or in the PCR in primary language, but let's not keep that as part of the mix. We'll break all that down later in the flow. We'll take all of your levels and we'll measure them and we'll do all the right thing to maintain that creative intent. But that way, when we swap languages, you still have the full mix and the experience is universal across all of the features that you're adding.
Yeah, it sounds so. I mean, you're really influencing, again, you're playing that middleman customer where you're influencing what you get delivered so that you can ultimately package a better experience across a broader spectrum
That's right.
for the audience.
That's right.
So let's talk a little bit about those graphics. You had painted a picture of a system that sort of knows when a lower third or a score bug needs to be on screen, sort of down to pixel and frame accuracy. How close is that to being sort of a normal part of what you do in the live workflow, and how much of it is still eyes on glass trying to fix the things that AI is not going to do for you?
Yeah, it's not close.
Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, but we are pushing, right? And I've had lots of conversations with lots of different people in the industry about this, but it comes back to, again, trying to force our consumers to fit into a specific mold. That includes the graphics, Andy, right? So if we're producing content in English and the crawl on the bottom of the screen is only in English, but I need Spanish, I'm not able to follow along with what's there on the screen. But to your
Right.
point, we know exactly when the button was pressed in PCR or the truck to bring that graphic in, bring it out. We've pre-designed the graphics down to the pixel to know exactly where they're located. We have actually done this, Andy. The Paris Olympics, Warner Brothers
Okay.
Discovery has Olympics rights in parts of Europe. And we have actually replaced bugs. I mentioned earlier, we don't distribute typically 4K content, especially where
Yeah.
it's not natively created in 4K. We'll deliver it as 1080p. But we had a 4K bug for linear on the screen, and we actually replaced that graphic because we knew exactly when and where it was on the screen with an HDR graphic instead. That's what went out to HBO Max. So we've started that path, but it is going to get more and more complex, and that relationship between streaming and those downstream workflows all the way up through the truck and PCR are going to be even more critical as we start to get metadata and timing and all the things that are going to be required to do those graphic replacements accurately.
Let's stay with the sort of the Olympics or premium sports in general. Why is it always the forcing function that we hear about for the kind of work that you're talking about in the industry? I know sports always comes up as the
Yeah,
one that's going to break every use case that we have. Why is that?
because it's hard. Live sports are so fast and it's happening just one thing after another very, very quickly. On top of that, you've got funny names of towns or cities or players that are not easily interpreted or delivered. You've got inflection from announcers. You have, like we talked about, lack of time to deliver from glass to glass, which leads to operational challenges. Um, as an example, I think sign language.
Mm,
It's so much more than just hands on a screen, right? So AI has come a long way, but you can't put a chicken on screen doing sign language in the bottom right corner because sign language, and again, I'm not a sign language expert at all. At all, but I have learned that it's definitely an art. These folks that are doing these interpretations are literal performers and artists. Inflection and tonality are delivered through things like body language and facial expression. So sign language and audio translations aren't always a one-to-one conversion, right? They require some sort of interpretation based on the way things are said in those different outputs. So it comes down to really the fast pace of that sporting event compared to a drama or a film release where you do have more time and a slower pace to fit some of those things in. It does create some challenges. Audio description is another one. Trying to jam in that
right.
AD in between the commentary and not step on each other. It's the same challenge.
Neil, I know we're at time, but I want to get in sort of your 3 year horizon for live sports here. So if we get everything right and everything keeps moving in the direction you're talking about, what's going to feel different for the fan in 3 years around what it is they're consuming that you're helping package up?
Yeah, so I hope in the next three, maybe even 5 years, but aggressively 3 years, every subscriber can turn on their TV for a live stream or linear broadcast and have a much more unified experience, no matter what language they speak or what feature they need. It should just be part of the experience. I saw someone say accessibility needs to be part of the live event spec runbook. Absolutely. That's what I want to expect in the next 3 years for sure. And we can do it. It draws in new audiences. It enables new ways of consuming TV that we haven't even imagined. And I think bringing these things together, we can get them right if we're creating premium content for everyone.
Hmm.
Shouldn't we really be creating it the right way? So that it
Absolutely.
actually is consumable by everyone.
Amazing. Look, Neal, thanks so much. I could keep talking about this for a long time, but appreciate you walking us through the live
Thank you. It's
experience.
good. It was
And
fun.
I'll pass it back over to Steve.
Yeah, this was fantastic. We really should have booked a whole hour for this. Of course, that would have meant Andy having to get up at an even more indecent hour
Indeed.
on the West Coast. But yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Neal. It's been great to do this. And
Thanks, Steve.
let's see. So and I do think the takeaway of the week is don't be afraid to break things. Um, but yeah, so before we wrap up here, just one more piece of business. The first person to correctly identify the track you heard as we were coming in, which was, of course, It Ain't Nothing But a Warner Brothers Party by Graham Central Station, was Beth Rosen. So congratulations, Beth. Watch your email in the next week or so to figure out how to claim your prize. And we will be back in at 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific for From Real Time to Broadcast, How Media Over Quick is Unlocking New Live Experiences. So hope to see you all then. Thanks again.